Hola de nuevo, hermanos y hermanas. Gracias por su apoyo. Los amo a todos. ¿Cómo estás? Estoy vivo, estoy bien. Gracias a Dios por otro día, por supuesto. I'm going to have a very broad, open conversation about developing a world language. Gracias nuevamente por su interés. Lo sé, sin subtitles. Thanks again for your interest. First, we have to establish small languages. What I mean by that is languages that serve a people in a particular area. Currently in 2022, we have thousands of them. However, we've had even more because with time, we also have a need to remain modern and connected in the languages that we use. So some of the languages kind of go away or get chewed up per se by other more modern languages. And it's nothing to really have too much feelings about. It's just a process. The longer we're here, the needs of our modern communication, well, they become more detailed as we become more detailed. As a quick example, some languages, there's only one word for he or she, like Mandarin and Hindi. And it's kind of like saying the noun is doing this rather than he or she, which you could see how would still work, especially at a time when we didn't have the degree of description, expectation in the practical use of our most modern, significant languages. Our modern significant languages are English, Mandarin, Spanish, and Hindi, based on the concept that those are the most spoken and the most widespread over the globe. If you speak a mother tongue other than those languages, chances are you do also understand at least one of them plus your mother tongue, based on the concept that a majority of the population is now bilingual and leaning on one of those significant languages in some way. English has been accepted as the second language in 67 countries of the world, and it is currently the most spoken language, and I suspect it will be for some time. And it has qualities that show signs of lasting due to its customizable nature and forgiveness. When you travel the world and you know English, you're generally understood. The whole point in developing a world language is to have one language that we can all be understood in, knowing if we have something to say, obviously we want to be understood by as many people as we can. And as we travel the world, we don't really want to have to worry too much about too many different dialects as we travel, understanding that language work is a lot of work and people don't have a lot of trouble absorbing two languages, but when you expand on that and you go to 3 and 4, it really starts to become a hassle. In developing a world language, it's not reasonable to expect there to be one language spoke. And in many ways, it hasn't really been reasonable to expect there to even be 4 languages spoken. Not everybody leans on English, though. Spanish is another language that I can foresee as a future leader, again, based on a lot of same things that I would say about English. Its tempo and the forgiveness, and the fact that English is in so many countries and Spanish is so much like English. The more people that actually know English, the easier it'll be for people to accept Spanish, due to how widespread Spanish is, and the fact that a lot of speakers like Greek and Portuguese, Latin, Filipino, a lot of these speakers are leaning more on Spanish for their one additional language to be understood, but also make an easy transfer to English because they know Spanish. So in that, I feel it's very logical that English and Spanish could be languages of the future. In reference to India, when you look at Hindi, you can actually see how it's kind of swirly like Telugu and Tamil, but it has some structure like Punjab and it's another one. Punjab and Bengali is another one that has some firmness to its authentic characters. And you can see the influence from all the different languages because Hindi was trying to find a common ground. However, there is also a lot of English influence in Hindi as well. The pinyin does not have any subtitles. Sorry, the pinyin does not have any tone markers. And the usage when you're translating from Hindi to English is going to translate more accurately to modern practical use of English than a lot of the more ancient Indian languages that are impressively still existing today. However, if you reference the opening of the conversation, a lot of those speakers are really enjoying speaking English and Spanish for their modern qualities. Hindi is considered the national language of India, and as someone who has experience with a lot of the Indian languages, I'm not fluent in any of them. Hindi is my strongest, but I can have counter communication in other Indian languages as well. I've had a lot of experience connecting with Indian brothers and sisters in multiple languages from India. And at the end of the day, we connect it all with English. And I can be standing between a Malayalam speaker and a Gujarati speaker, and I can speak to them both in English about whatever I want. And for the most part, as long as they have developed their language skill to the degree for permanent residency in our country, I can talk to them in English and they will understand me, and they can talk back to me in English and I can understand them. But I do not understand Gujarati or Malayalam when it spoke to me. So it's because of the work of the people learning English and Spanish as their second languages that's been able to make those languages significant global languages. That is on the people's efforts over a course of thousands of years. So now we have a couple significant languages that we can work with. And we still need common ground. If most people lean on English and Spanish as their second language to a degree where we lock in the second languages, but not the first languages. because you can't decide what the mother tongues are at this point. But if we can save mother tongues, well, that will be great. We know some have to go based on the language evolution. We see how some languages are leaning on more swift modern languages, and a lot of those people enjoy speaking these modern languages, like I said, for a lot of those reasons. So when an English speaker goes to some of those languages, they do actually feel like they speak more and they have to talk slower and all those things, because it's just the truth. That doesn't mean that that language isn't a good language. It's just used differently. But when you're used to running all the time running, well, walking is pretty boring. And to a lot of those people that are coming to English, well, they like the tempo of English. They're still who they are. They still have their mother tongue, and it's still important. Due to the fact that the sway has been towards English for so long, as I've mentioned a couple of times, but it's a significant point. Since the sway is towards English for so long, it doesn't even really matter where you live. There is a strong possibility that there is a lot of members of your community, and you do not have to worry about speaking any of those other languages to them, because they have all learned English or Spanish in your area, and you don't have to stress about language, and you don't have to worry about it on their effort. But they still have to learn your language in order for the world to connect. They are happy to do so. And I just think a little acknowledgement to their direction is just common courtesy. None of them expect anybody to learn their language if they don't have to. And again, in what I'm doing, I've developed a significant circumstance for myself where language learning isn't the same for me. But the average person isn't going to want to learn more than 2 languages. But in 2022, a majority of the population is bilingual, so it's really not that big of a deal. So if we can lock in the second languages, now again, it's not really logical to have one language. So I like the idea as an English speaker, of course, to say, let's lock in English as the second language. And modernly, it would make more sense than making that statement, say, 20 years ago. But I still don't think we should just stick with one language. However, if we did stick with more of English and Spanish, well, that still allows those 2 swift modern languages to more or less take lead as the second language. And if you already speak English, you don't want to learn another language, and you don't have to. And even in hearing this, you still don't have to. But if you do, well, the easiest language for you to learn would be the other universal language. And then it wouldn't matter if you didn't speak Hindi or Greek. If you knew English and Spanish, you could go to India, and then you could go to Greece, and you could speak English here, and you could speak Spanish there, and you have what you need. Again, that is a very big concept. These are all concepts that I know would work, but I know they're too big for me to even expect anybody to do. However, I think if you are serious about language development, it's a perspective that you would be able to uphold seriously. Thank you very much for your interest in my perspectives on this topic. And just before I go, I do have to make another statement in reference to Mandarin. And I want to speak Mandarin to you right now, but I'm not going to, because I know hardly anybody learns it. And I know that it is very much so the polar opposite to the language that most people know. And if you're not needing to go to Mandarin, you're not going to learn it. But English is the second language for Mandarin people. It's not Spanish. And they need to learn English to be included in the world, because if they don't, people are not learning Mandarin and they're excluded. And that is a serious problem. We have billions of fucking Mandarin people. We need to include them in the world. We need their insights. Look what China does for the world, and Taiwan, all those areas. Look what they do for the world. And they're working very hard. And if you want to cut them down because of pollution and different things, well, their people are crying about those things and they're being ignored too. So you can't hold it against the people. They're not the ones that want that being done either. And they still have to learn English. And respectfully, it's equally as much of a jump for them to come to English as it is for you to go to Mandarin. You don't have to learn Mandarin. They do have to learn English. And there is a need for an increased sensitivity to that. Mandarin is a fantastic language, and I understand the circumstance. And I sincerely really hope that we can help save Mandarin in a way where people are just comfortable with hearing it. We don't have to make fun of it. We don't have to fear it. We know it's very, very different from English. Most people are comfortable with English, so most people are not comfortable hearing Mandarin. But even Mandarin people are becoming uncomfortable with speaking Mandarin when they're not around other Mandarin people. They don't want to be made fun of. And it's not funny. So I hope if you are serious about language development, that's a perspective you can hold, because a lot of children are growing up in communities that have no responsibility to the Mandarin language, but because so many people have that kind of attitude about it, well, those kids are growing up around kids that are not comfortable with their mother tongue. And we need diversity, and nobody's trying to shut anybody out. We're trying to include everybody. That's the point in developing the language. Mandarin people probably didn't even think anything of it until I pointed out that they all know English because they're just doing it. It's just language maturity. And the same goes in India and all the areas. A lot of them didn't even really comprehend what was happening to the degree until I pointed it out. But they can see that I'm right. And that's the significance to me pointing it out. Was they all learned my language, and if I would have only learned Mandarin, well, that could have been significant in its own, given the circumstance. But I learned so many of them that I was able to open up the perspective. When I did that, again, I saw how English was uniting our Indian brothers and sisters. And I saw how English was setting them free of that extreme language separation that they have. And then I saw same thing happening in around China and Taiwan areas. And then I saw the same thing happening in the Philippines, where a lot of people migrate into the Philippines. You got a big variety of people there. Same thing's happening there. And then as I was going through it, I realized that if we take that same concept that's been helping the Indian people connect through English, well, because of everybody's efforts, we can actually apply that same concept to the world. And if we want to keep it split, we can lean on English and Spanish as leading languages of the future due to their modern qualities and tempo, but still maintain the mother tongues. And additionally, with a language like Hindi, if you display it in pinyin form, there's no tone markers, it's the same alphabet, and it would very much so be like a Spanish to people that have no responsibility to the Hindi language. And it could pique interest because it's lining up with that alphabet. In Mandarin, obviously they also have pinyin, and I personally am heavily reliant on pinyin, but my authentic skills improve with time and exposure naturally. Their pinyin needs those tone markers or it's just wrong. And the pinyin that they are used to posting here in North America is very disrespectful pinyin. You cannot learn the Mandarin language without the tone markers. Their authentic print is important to save for the language. And I'm not trying to disrespect Hindi, and I feel like it's understood that I'm not trying to disrespect any language. But as our Indian brothers and sisters are used to using English, when we're texting and stuff, we're using pinyin, and it's very common for most of them just to use pinyin. We're not texting in authentic print. And so in that, it feels, from my experience, those people may be able to accept displaying Hindi a lot in pinyin form for the sake of helping others develop interest in the Hindi language. If we do that, well, then we have English, Spanish, Hindi presented with the same alphabet, piquing interest possibly on both sides, but we still have Mandarin where we need those tone markers and the authentic print to keep the language alive. So, on a screen with those subtitles, you would have 3 with the same alphabet, no tone markers, just what they are, and then you have Mandarin. Again, Mandarin people have to learn English. So, they deserve the consideration too. Thank you again very much for your interest in my perspective on this topic. I hear another plane coming. I know it's going to distract me, and I feel like this was a good take. So, 我必须去。我爱你们。今天吃得好，保持乐观，度过美好的一天。Because it's important to your well-being. Subiko Shanti. Gracias a Dios de nuevo. Bye for now.